Welcome to the Tower UNN. My name is Dr. Juko, as usual, the presenter of the show. This evening, we have had a lot of issues that need to be discussed tonight in this show. There's a continuous unfolding of disastrous events at the end of the year 2021. And we are going to look at some of those issues that really have come through this week as we try to look at different topical issues that have come over. With me in the studios, I have various guests. I have Madame or Miss Miriam Chomugaso, who is a human rights activist. I mean, she's a director at Center for Constitutional Governance. Welcome to the show, Miriam.
Hello?
Welcome to the show.
Hello?
Can you unmute yourself, please?
Can you hear me?
Unmute yourself.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, man.
I don't hear her.
Can we start, please?
Okay, go ahead.
I can't hear you.
This week we have had great events that have unfolded, and when you look at what happened in Congo, DRC has joined the East African community, and in the process, we observe that countries have welcomed Congo in the process. And before we do any discussion, I would like to have a video that talks about the joining of Congo into the East African community.
The Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, will soon join the East African community if the process set in motion proceeds without major hitches. With an area of 2.34 million square kilometers, DRC is the second largest nation in Africa, only smaller than Algeria. The large country also has a huge market potential with a population of 81 million people. It is this market that the East African community wants to tap into.
DRC is a vast country with a big number of people. The population is big, so that's a big addition to our market.
A team of experts from the East African community, led by the Secretary General Dr. Peter Mathuki, and others from each of the 6 partner states, gathered in the eastern DRC town of Goma to launch a verification team that will either clear or deny the country's entry into the community.
It's good news that the verification is beginning. It shows that the process to admit the DRC has started, and possibly the DRC could be admitted sooner than later, depending on the outcome of the verification, but we don't see any serious issues ahead of that.
The team is expected to review the current status of the DRC and assess the country's suitability to be admitted into the community as provided by the East African Community Treaty. The verification team is expected to submit the report of their verification mission to the Council of Ministers by November 2021 for onward consideration by the Summit of Heads of State, expected to sit in December this year, to either admit or reject DRC. However, basing on the DRC's economic potential for the region, there are very high chances that the war-torn country will be given a green light to become a full member of the East African community. This will widen the regional market to about 250 million people.
We already have about 180 million. So 250 million people within this EAC is a huge market. So we are excited that at the prospects of DRC coming. However, we are still beginning to question why we would continue to expand when our response in terms of facilitating this integration is limited.
However, large parts of the DRC, especially in the east, were under government control, and these areas have become a safe haven for rebel groups and local militias which continue to terrorize the population and occasionally neighboring countries.
The East African integration is strategic security to ensure that we form one coherent system whereby we do not have instabilities in different partner states. For example, if there is a rebel group in DRC that is destabilizing the country, the East African standby forces have the capacity of mobilizing themselves. They go and dismantle that group that will have been destabilizing the people of DRC.
In terms of security, will be done jointly. All these who are smuggling pirates on Lake Albert and Lake Kivu, it will be done jointly.
Clearing and establishing proper intent within the business community. It has nothing to do with governance, because in any case, even the partner states that are already part of the EAC, it does not mean they are being governed well. So what we are trying to do is to make sure we converge, create a substantial market and benefit from economies of integration. I support their coming.
Recently, President Yoweri Museveni, together with his counterpart Felix Tshisekedi, launched the construction of roads into DRC, a gesture of Congo's acceptance as the seventh potential member of the East African community. Research conducted by the East African Business Council indicates that by 2018, EAC exports to DRC stood at $7.4 billion US. The criteria for submission of the new country into the community includes acceptance of the community, adherence to the universally accepted principles of good governance, democracy, the rule of law, observance of human rights and social justice, potential contribution to strengthening the integration within the East African region, and the geographical proximity to the EAC partner states.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That one gives us a very good, clear picture of what happened, what is happening with the DRC Congo. What we need to understand is that the regional presidents sat and then gave a green light, which is a consent to the negotiation that will see the Democratic Republic of Congo join the East African community. That is on Wednesday 18th. There was an extraordinary East African Heads of State Summit that was held virtually. It was chaired by the Kenyan President, Uhuru Kenyatta. The leaders received a considerable report by the Council of Ministers on a verification mission to Kinshasa. So with me in the studios, I have Stephen. Stephen, you're welcome to the tower.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noldini Juko, and all my fellow panelists, and to all our viewers and our listeners. Good evening from Uganda. Thank you for having me, and I wish you nice deliberations.
Thank you very much. Also on the panel in the studios, I have Lawrence, our usual analyst. Lawrence, welcome to the tower at UNN this evening.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Chuko, for once again inviting me to the tower. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be part of this big discussion to push the message forward to our brothers and sisters out there into a deeper analysis of issues that surround whatever forces are guiding or presiding over them wherever they are, especially those who are in our home country. It's always a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for the invite, and I welcome fellow panelists to the show. I hope we do have a good presentation today, as always. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lawrence. Let me start with Stephen. Stephen,
yes,
you have heard how Uganda seems to be very interested in this joining, DRC's joining. It comes at a time when one wonders why the president of Uganda seems to be very much interested in DRC Congo's participation of joining the East African community. And yet, coincidentally, you see that in Congo, Uganda is very busy constructing roads and all other issues that relate to the Congo. What is your take on this, and why do you think there is always Uganda seems to be very much interested in Congo, and what is the deal that you think they are trying to chase?
Thank you so much, Dr. Noldin, and all my colleagues outside there. Of course, from the economic sense, the admission of Congo to the East African community would be a very exciting deal, not only for Uganda, but for the East African community. It would mean an addition of almost over 60 million customers to the already existing close to 200 million people who are making up the East African market base. So in terms of economics, it would make a very good economic sense because Congo is a huge country. In terms of population, it would even be bigger than the population of Tanzania. So it would mean that now East Africa has now finally received the 7th member of the community with an addition of around 60 million customers. Now, for the side of Uganda, why Uganda would be very excited for the inclusion of Congo to the East African community, of course, there are obvious reasons. Reason number one is the accessibility to the Congolese market. Previously, we used to engage in businesses with the Congo, but not as a community, not under terms of the East African community, but as individual countries. And of course, it was on a small scale. Don't forget that previously we had our own issues, especially with the previous regimes in Congo. And so businesses were not thriving as we expect them to thrive after the inclusion of Congo. So for Uganda, it is good news, and it is the reason why perhaps our military is all over Congo to try to bring peace in the Congo. To all my listeners, you should be aware that Congo for the last 100+ years has been an area of turbulence, especially right from the period of the colonialists. From the time of the people like Leopold and others, Congo has never been at peace. Even during the time of Mobutu would only control Kinshasa, but the rest of the areas, things were not at par. To our viewers, and what is happening in Congo? What is the political structure of Congo? Congo has around 8 sides of Uganda. You can fit in around 8 Uganda into Congo. Now, the challenge with the Congo is that it has loose political federations, that it has around 8 provinces. Unfortunately, most of these provinces are almost independently governed. We have fine the headquarters in Kinshasa, but these other provinces like Ituri, like Goma, mention them. They are all almost behaving or treating themselves as semi-independent states. So the reason why now Uganda has rushed to Congo to have a head-on with the rebels, have roads constructed, it is because of the hot deal that is associated with this East African community. Now, unfortunately, as a deep analysis, You see, when you marry a woman with so many challenges, you marry her with all her baggage. Now, Congo is coming at the time as a new woman, coming at the time when she's having so many challenges. Over 8 rebel groups, over 8 to 10 rebel groups, they're operating within Congo. There are so many infrastructure bottlenecks within Congo. We have the linguistic problem that may also hinder the so-called expected economic gains from this kind of federation. And so, as the East African community marries Congo into the federation, these are very, very important to note. Number one is that they are likely to have a very big challenge of language. It is true we have some element of Kiswahili being spoken all across, but of course in some other East African countries, Kiswahili is not widely spoken. A case in example is Uganda. We are not so much Kiswahili speakers, and so the language issue may bring a very big problem into this new relationship. And then, of course, without forgetting the issue of insecurity. You know that Congo is the base for ADF, for the case of Uganda. And just like earlier on I told you, it is the reason why Uganda has rushed in, of course, after cracking a deal with the government of Congo to try to go and flush out the rebels. But of course, it's not only ADF that is there. There are so many rebel groups that are there. And to my observation, it may not be easier for Uganda to try to eliminate one rebel group and have peace. One rebel group fine may be eliminated, but how about others? How about other rebel groups that are operating there? So this one is a very big impediment to the kind of lucrative trade that is being targeted. So the issue of insecurity for the case of Uganda is very, 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 very serious. And to make matters worse, because we are bordering, we are direct neighbors to Congo, it affects us so much.
Yes, Stephen, let's hold it from there for now. And
yes,
let's hold it from there. We'll pick it from there. Let me have Miriam. Miriam, you've heard what Stephen has talked about, has given a good background and the structure, the political and economic structure of Congo. But when you look at what is happening, it seems like Uganda is too much the one pushing for this relationship. And it is coincidentally also that, it's coincidentally you can see that Congo, Uganda has gone to Congo in the name of trying to chase away the ADF and other rebels. Now, in the process, they are constructing roads. So they are trying to pull Congo into an East African cooperation when Congo has a lot of issues, politically, socially, and economically. As Stephen has said, would you dig deep into that and give us your view about it?
Like Stephen said, the idea of having DRC as part of East African community is a great addition economically. However, the current situation makes it a bit complicated, but it could as well be the solution. So far, the problems you are highlighting are already happening, and DRC is not yet part of East African community, but it shares borders with the majority of East African community countries. Therefore, the problems of Democratic Republic of Congo become the problems of other East African member countries. For so long, all East African community members, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, have been going to Congo either diplomatically or sending forces just to ensure that there is peace and security in that area. and nothing much has happened. So maybe adding them to East African community might be a solution. Why is Uganda so eager about it? Maybe because it's going to benefit a lot since it shares the large borderline with the DRC, and maybe because it is suffering more from the overflow from DRC problems. We have the highest number of refugees from Democratic Republic of Congo. We have the biggest conflict interference from Diplomatic Republic of Congo. And on the economic side, we have trade, which is also interfered with by the conflict. So if the conflicts were not there, we would be benefiting more from that trade. As for EAC, I think the bigger plan, whether it's today or tomorrow or yesterday, has been to incorporate the Democratic Republic of Congo into the community. They asked for it, but on the bigger picture, and if you follow like the African development infrastructure projects, it factors DRC with East African community. If you follow like the Northern Southern Corridor infrastructure projects, the road networks, the railway networks, and the bigger trade ports and all that, you see like DRC is incorporated into the East African community geopolitically and economically. However, the biggest challenge we have is I don't want to call them imperialistic tendencies, but the political, the geopolitical interest of the current members of East African community, more specifically Rwanda and Uganda. Are they genuinely interested in pacifying DRC? Are they genuinely interested in having DRC as part of East African community, or it's for personal and political interests of those particular states? And when DRC is admitted into East African community, will those conflicts of which extend to DRC border, will they stop? Will they respect DRC as a full member of the East African community, and thus allow the problems that come from DRC to be resolved by the East African community in general, not by particular leaders going it alone or going it with their own governments to the DRC. But by and large, I think it's a welcome idea. So far, if you look forward with the recent environmental meeting which was happening globally, you would they said that in future the biggest source of the green energy is Democratic Republic of Congo. Specifically, it accounts for more than 60% of the minerals required for the green energy revolution worldwide. So having that as part of our member definitely is a big plus. It's a source of employment for our young population, and it's a source of trade, exchange, everything. And if Congo is better, all East African members countries will be better, because instead of having refugees and overflow of problems, we would have opportunities in that place.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miriam, for the insight. And actually, when you look at the situation that we have in Congo, it's quite intriguing that they come at a time when there is a big problem of people dying in the eastern part of Congo, and everyone is wondering how the coming on Congo would help to reduce that pressure which is in the eastern part of Congo. Let me bring in Lawrence on the same note. Lawrence, when you look at what William has said and what Stephen has said, it becomes quite important that the whole situation seems to be in disarray, because people wonder what a common person is going to gain in the Congo marriage with the East African community. What do you think? Is it an advantage for Uganda or for the people, the local person in Congo, in Uganda, in Tanzania? Is there any reaping from such relations?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nadine, again for that question. Myself, I would look at Congo's inclusion first as a good thing, definitely. You know, when two nations or two people get together, especially with the common objective, which is supposed to make their lives better, it's always a good step moving forward in the right direction, especially if you want to get ahead in this global village. Nations world over have been coming together for different ideas, most especially for trade and of course commerce. That is usually the biggest idea. Then other things, you know, can trickle in the background. So looking at Congo's inclusion in the East African community, I would first look at it as a good thing in that Africa, of course, needs to come together just like the way the US did come together with the different states to form what we know today as the United States of America. That could be a very good vision also for Africa, and these small steps the region is are, you know, steps towards that direction, which will make maybe one day us to the same footing. But of course, this doesn't come with its own challenges, and of course, many unintended consequences per se. And just looking at where Congo is right now, just like my brother Silas just left, but to elaborate, I think it's not the best position to be the sort of high bride or to join this wedding that we're having in East Africa. My own thinking is Congo seems to be more towards the West African part of it, because, and I think that's why they are actually French speaking, because I think that region was more colonized by the French and the other superpowers, other than the British, like the way we are in East Africa, with Congo, with Tanzania and Kenya. So there are all those kind of inherited problems or issues that we have to so much deep into before we can move forward as a body. But again, looking at the East African community where it is right now, we've already included more partner states, which is Burundi, Rwanda, and of course South Sudan. So far, I think the East African community is moving up to over almost 1 billion people. It is something like that. Sorry. Okay, my producer just put up just the number of people employed in the different sectors within the region. Yes, we could first look at that anyway before we look at the other issues. Just looking at trade, I think we can all agree that we are all more service-based, community per se. We're more invested in the service industry, other than agriculture and industry. And of course, this is kind of not ideal for especially a place which has the most fertile soils around the world. We should probably be having more agriculture happening within these areas. But again, you can see we are following the global trend, which is everyone getting into the service industry. And so, the service industry isn't all that a bad direction for countries to take, because I think countries that have reached a certain level of development do not get back into agriculture. Agriculture tends to be on a lower scale in places that have actually more developed. Right, sorry about that. So moving forward towards tertiary education, we can see that there's less enrollment of people in tertiary at the tertiary level. So that shows you that in terms of human development, the community still has a lot to do to improve those numbers, because you are building a big vision, and it would help us further to have a very enlightened population to take on. To take on responsibilities in managing whatever mergers we're going to build across the region. And finally, I would want to look at how we're distributing our human capital that we have across the different different fields, again, within the region per se, as of now. Almost all regions across the board are having over 50 or 60, even sometimes 70% of the population engaged in agriculture. So you can see that agriculture is still a major economic undertaking within the region that we need, or we should be gaining more from economically, because there are more people who are engaged in this in the agriculture sector. And then coming to industry, it is almost everyone has probably less than 10%. And of course, the service industry is anywhere between 10 and 20 or 30% of the population. So looking at those, that's how we are looking at a regional level, how labor is distributed across the different sectors. Now, that being the face of how East Africa looks right now, bringing in another member on board, is this going to be a good point to push them in while we're still struggling to close whatever bottlenecks, and then improve our international posture in terms of security, and how we are going to what exports we're going to push out there? Because I think we're still exporting more primary products than finished products to other nations. That is a question that is, of course, left now to the community itself to answer. If they so feel that at the moment it makes more sense to first get all the possible members on board first, then we can solve all our problems together, then that could be a direction we could take. I'm not sure of whether this is going to work, but it's a chance we could try, or it's something we could try and then see how far that takes us. And on that note, I would beg to submit, Nadine.
Dr. Andrew Takome Kaira was born on 30th January 1945 in a small town known as Nkokonjeru in the Uganda region. He is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country sent him to an early grave. He was a lawyer and professor and had many accomplishments since 1971, with many of his accolades attained from his education and political experiences, both nationally and internationally. Significant is his doctoral dissertation titled Condoism in Uganda, which has awarded him an internationally recognized terminology now used in criminology. He joined several political organizations, including Uganda Freedom Movement, UFM, which he was the leader, the Uganda National Liberation Front, UNNF, later joining the National Resistance Army, NRA, which had once been his organization's rival. Dr. Kayiira is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country led to his premature death. He was just 46 years old when he was assassinated on 6th March 1987 during a dinner with his close friends and 3 female acquaintances. His killers have never been brought to justice. Dr. Andrew Takome Kayiira was born on 30th January 1945 in a small town known as Nkokonjeru in the Uganda region. He is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country sent him to an early grave. He was a lawyer and professor and had many accomplishments since 1971, with many of his accolades attained from his education and political experiences, both nationally and internationally. Significant is his doctoral dissertation titled Contagious in Uganda, which has awarded him an internationally recognized terminology now used in criminology. He joined several political organizations, including Uganda Freedom Movement, UFM, which he was the leader, the Uganda National Liberation Front, UNNF, later joining the National Resistance Army, NRA, which had once been his organization's rival. Dr. Kayiira is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country led to his premature death. He was just 46 years old when he was assassinated on 6th March 1987 during a dinner with his close friends and 3 female acquaintances. His killers have never been brought to justice.
Welcome back to the tower at UNN, the second part of the show, as we try to look at some of the important issues that have really been happening in Uganda. With me in the studios, I have Miriam Chomgasho, a human rights activist and also a director at Human Rights and Governance in the Saint. I also have Lawrence, as usual, who is our usual analyst, and we're trying to look into some great issues that have really happened in Uganda. I also have Stephen, all the way from Uganda online. Stephen, I give you 2 minutes to wind up the issue of Congo, and then we go to another issue. Just 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Donnelly. I want to appreciate my friend Lawrence and
I think we have a bad sound for Stephen.
As I bring everything to a close from Congo, can I go on?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My biggest worry with this kind of marriage is the very problem that we've been having with other member states. Not a while ago, you will remember that Uganda has been at loggerheads with Kenya over the issue of trade wars. Now remember, these are all the member states that are supposed to give guidelines and limelight to the rest of the new members. But they are fighting over something that is very, very trivial. The other day, the Ugandan government arrested fish from Kenya. When you look at the way they conduct themselves over taxes, you just laugh it off. And you discover that selfish interests of each individual member state, as opposed to the economic bloc, is a very big threat. we may include and co-opt as many countries, provided we don't
Yes,
remain at stake. The number two, when you look at countries where
Go ahead, Stephen.
you'll discover that they have this one thing in common, and that is the stable political platform. Now, when you look at these 7 countries, most of them are not politically stable. We have different political definitions as far as our so-called democracy is concerned. When you look at Uganda and when you look at Tanzania and Kenya, for them, they are somewhere, somehow, at least they have defined their political path democratically, 2 terms, and the president goes. In other countries, we are yet to be there. Now, that kind of difference in the political platform, in the political practice, may bring us so many issues. And that is the reason why, when it comes to politics, there is nothing that brings us closer. Nothing completely, because we are having different political paths. In Uganda, it is unlimited Chanja, unlimited. When you go to Rwanda, the president can rule as long as
I am afraid we have a problem with the sound from. I think I'll bring you over later on. Once again, let me go to. Let me have Miriam. Miriam, within 2 minutes, let's wrap up the issue of Congo.
The Congo issue, from the Pan-African point of view, I think that the biggest picture is a united Africa. So any journey towards the integration, whether at the regional level, whether at the continental level, is highly very appreciated. There won't be a moment when all African countries are at par to move forward at the same pace. So others have to pull each other in order to progress. An example is West Africa, the ECOWAS. Not all countries are the same politically, democratically. Ghana is ahead of so many, and others are just tagging along, and the stronger countries, the more democratic, are helping each other, just democratize and stabilize. And the region is moving forward economically and politically. Another example is SADC. SADC is not at par when it comes to the politics. So the issue that Lawrence was raising, that the politics being not at par would be a hindrance, I would rather look at it, would like to look at it on a positive view. And I think whether we unite with these countries, the South Sudan or DRC, which are politically lagging behind, whether we unite with them or not, the political challenge won't go away. So we would rather unite with them and work it out. We are better more united than disunited or amalgamated the way we are today. And I would like to comment that maybe as an observation, the EAC institution needs to be strengthened further. It should be the vehicle of unity, the vehicle of security, the vehicle of legislature, economic integration, and that would eliminate the individual country conflicts and overlaps that we see around. For example, what is going on between Uganda and Rwanda shouldn't be happening if East African community was stronger. The differences between Kenya and Tanzania and Uganda as far as trade, the East African Railway Project, All those things are so minor compared to the bigger picture of having an integrated East African community. But the challenge we have is a weak institution at East African community institution itself. Maybe it's like a chicken and egg, which comes faster. If the leaders are not interested in having a stronger regional body, or it's the weaknesses of individual leaders, and that is creating a weaker united body at the center. But a stronger East African community institution is in the long run, it's the best solution for the conflicts, especially in the Great Lakes region. The political and the economic conflicts will be resolved by a united body of all these countries. IGAD alone is not enough to do that. And today, the conflict that is going on in DRC, where Rwanda is likely to clash with Uganda because of deploying in DRC, like they usually do, would easily be resolved if they send there a united East African force, like the same thing we do to Somalia, the AMISOM. Can we push forward the East African community to say that we are creating a more united voice other than seeing individual leaders taking over the process and trying to drive it towards their selfish interests, like the case with Uganda and DRC, Rwanda with the DRC, and then Tanzania standing alone on itself. And then secondly, like Lawrence hinted on, our political differences, we are especially the dictatorships going on. Other countries are more democratized than others, but in the long run, that's quite a mean. That's work in progress. We might don't see it as a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's not insurmountable. It's a challenge that can be resolved. The more united, the better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miriam, for the wonderful observation. Let me bring Lawrence. Lawrence, finally, within 2 minutes, I want you to wrap up the issue of Congo.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Jericho, again. Just my final thoughts on Congo's inclusion to the East African community is, yes, I've already elaborated the status of the EAC, just using a few indicators that we have on ground, and this report, of course, is coming from the EAC itself. But looking at where it is of the timing right now of Congo joining vis-a-vis what is happening elsewhere in the region is just like Madame Miriam has just explained. Yes, our political other differences are always being impacted. They are always going to stand up because we are a diverse region with so many ethnicities, so many languages in there, and of course cultural differences and all that. And yes, the regional body coming in to kind of unite us is probably one of the best ideas, maybe to kind of undertone or underplay all the other issues and try to manage them from a whole different angle other than, you know, even just the straitjackets we have as nations currently. Of course, this is going to be a very tough journey moving forward for all the stakeholders. And whether we like it or not, maybe sooner or later, maybe this, this region or this continent will one day be united. And maybe the sooner we do it, even the better. And then maybe we can sort out our differences better. But again, that being the case, we shouldn't kind of neglect the issues that we have to deal with forthright. The issue of security. I think we can agree that we cannot really integrate if, some parts or some of the nations are dealing with security issues. Just like UNN is apparently trying to do an AD, and Congo has its own bunch of rebel groups there. Rwanda also has its own threats and ODAs. It probably seems to be the most stable of the countries that are in the East African community. And that is almost evident in the way, in its even propensity to borrow. I think Tanzania's debt to GDP ratio is about 39%, which is, I think, the lowest in the region. Now, bringing in Congo at the moment, Congo's GDP to debt ratio is actually lower than the rest of the states in the region. Congo's debt is about 15% of its GDP, so it has the least debt per se compared to all the other member states. Kenya is already up to 59%. Uganda is also running up to 50 plus and moving forward. Now, we're taking on so much. We're getting into a member club and everyone is coming, in with baggage. At the end of the day, we are going to have to share all these problems. What I don't know is whether, the other member states will be willing to take on everyone's burden. It's good that right now Uganda is taking the lead, yes, trying to sort infrastructure issues, security issues for Congo, but is it sustainable? And again, who is paying the bill for this? Is it the Ugandan taxpayers who are footing the bills for UPF being in Congo? Is it Congo paying for our soldiers being there? All those dynamics have to be looked at with a very sober mind and with a lot of realism, such as you don't leave anything not taken care of. But that being the case, of course, we also have the language issue. Yes, the East African community to push for Swahili to be the regional language. Is it even feasible? I think it has already failed in Uganda and probably Rwanda and maybe South Sudan as well. You're not going to find so many people speaking Swahili, and these nations have very large populations. Now, if you add Congo, that's even going to be more interesting. And having a common language would be so good in trying to deal with the communication issues and maybe solve other issues altogether that the region is dealing with. But other than that, if we can solve all the problems that are before us, I think it would be a good idea just to have more members in the community and then try to deal with the problems that we have as a bloc. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that wonderful observation. Let's shift very fast to the issue of COVID. The Omnicron Covid variant seems to be very contagious, but not so scary like the other variants that we have had before. It has been mentioned that recently, I think last week or this week, we had an issue of the members of parliament having around 50 members of parliament in Uganda tested positive of COVID. And this is quite intriguing because you would expect them to be very, very protective to themselves and also giving themselves good time to check and see whether they are quite good for the work that they're doing. And here is a challenge that if the members of parliament can get contagious by the Omnicron, what about the population, the other population, and what about our children that are going to go to school in the next 10 or 15 days? I would like to dig deep into this as well and find out what is really on the ground and what we expect to happen. Let me bring in Miriam on this regard. Miriam,
Yes.
if you look at what happened, as I've mentioned in Uganda, the COVID, where you are, I believe you have also observed it, that we don't have, it's not so scary with Omnicron like we had the other two variants. And in this regard, people seem not to be so much scared. And the situation we have in Uganda seems to be that we are coming back to the normal. And in the due course, we believe that there is need to look into this issue and analyze it to a normal person who is living in Uganda and find out exactly what is the direction of this. Would you dig deep into this, please?
For the Omicron, actually the case of the MPs is an indication of how bad the situation is, or how quickly things can go out of hand. When I look at Uganda today, people, as you know, every other person travels up country for Christmas, and most of these people are coming from abroad. They are coming from countries which have had serious cases of Omicron, like South Africa and other East African countries. So this Christmas is likely to be a big spreader of the new infections, and they will go to a population that is a bit less vaccinated. So far, the ministry is putting the number of Ugandans vaccinated at 10 million, like 100,000 plus, but that leaves 29 or 30 million unvaccinated Ugandans. I kind of think that Omicron in these countries where it started from, like South Africa, like Europe and USA, could have been mild because people are largely vaccinated. And when it comes to a population that is largely unvaccinated, we don't know how bad the situation might be. And to make matters worse is like Uganda has so relaxed around Corona that people have moved on, which is very scary. You move on to what? We haven't mastered the treatment regimens against coronavirus. The Covidex and other herbal treatments that were developed are not yet tested and approved for treatment of COVID cases. We still have a large population that is unvaccinated. We have students of all ages, from nursery to university, coming back to schools in the next week or two. So we really have, we are likely to see an upsurge of COVID cases, yet the mechanisms that would have controlled it, the government emergency services, the health emergency, the mechanisms that were put in place, the local government, the up-country health care services, supposed care for emergencies, have relaxed a bit and some have run out of resources. I heard the minister said recently that even the vehicles that were sent there to cater for emergency cases and monitoring were used by the LC officials, local government officials at the district for other things. They even rubbed off the words COVID from the vehicles and put them to personal use. So we are running into a danger of having an upsurge to a population that has left the COVID thing. I can hear my echo, please. Sorry. There is a need for, I think the president has relaxed on his message. The whole ministry needs to really step up. This is a new variant coming in at the heels of Delta, just a few months. We don't even know what is gonna come tomorrow. Yet there are no mechanism even to control what is the crisis that is existing today. So what is the future of Uganda in case there comes a really more serious variant right now?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miriam, for the observation that you've made. Let me have Stephen. Stephen, I hope you're there. Stephen,
yes.
The issue of COVID, yes. You must be on the ground and you know
yes, please.
what is happening. What is your take on what is happening?
Yes, please.
With the Omnicron COVID variant, which seems to be becoming very contagious, though it is not having very much impact on the health of the people, but it seems to be more contagious than the rest, the others that we have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nuldi. I want to appreciate Miriam for her submission. It is very scary to hear that more than 50 members of parliament who went for for East African Games contracted the Omnicron virus. In Uganda, it is quite caring. Why? Because look at the infrastructure, the nature and the behavior of our people. It will be very, very, very dangerous. And to me, I have a very big quarrel with these MPs because they really reflect the kind of people they represent. There is a common saying in Uganda that everyone in the party represents the kind of people he or she represents. Now, members of parliament are expected to be very professional with the highest degree of conscience and a sense of care, a sense of being careful. I should use that word. Now, it is very unfortunate that these members of parliament that would expect to observe the highest level of carefulness went and became so reckless and contracted this Omicron. Now, the parliament would be part of, the parliamentary games, in my own observation, would have been postponed, if not stopped. Because just like Miriam said, that in Uganda, having been battered by this pandemic for almost 2 years, Uganda is number one. They have been battered, they are no longer scared. They are saying, come what may. They are willing to move on with their own lives. And that one explains the reason why. When these MPs went outside there, they were free. They are not observing the so-called standard operation procedures and that would expect them as leaders to observe and to live by example. Now, when you look at what is happening and what is going to happen, you need to come to Kampala and see the interactions in Chikubo, the main streets of Kampala. You need to go to Kampala markets. You need to come to our churches. You need to come to our public transport and see. People are already living a normal life. Actually, for them, the economy was open long time ago. What President Museveni is going to do in one of the weeks in January is just going to be a formal opening of the economy. But Ugandans opened the economy a long time ago. Now, the challenge with that is that this kind of variant is very, very, very dangerous. And given the state of our health infrastructure, if this is spread, and given the background that almost half of Ugandans are not vaccinated, I fear that in the near future, especially in the month of March or the month of April, we are likely to enter into another one. And we are very, very dangerous. It is indicated that this variant is as dangerous as other variants that we have had before. But in cases of people with pressure, people with diabetes, and we have almost a vast population of people living with the HIV. And I don't think Omicron can spare such people. So, looking at a very big fraction of around 8 to 9 million Ugandans who are diseased, who are vulnerable to this kind of pandemic, you discover that it's very dangerous, very, very dangerous. So, my take as I conclude is that Ugandans need to be advised, government officers and all those people in leadership They need to come to their senses and lead by example. That is number one. Number two, because we are now lowered our gun, and that is the reason why when our MPs went to TZ, they went in a very normal and free kind of environment. But to our surprise, guess what happened? I'm wondering who is now paying the isolation bills. I'm wondering who is taking care of them. But it is a signal. It is a signal that we are not yet safe as a country. We are not yet safe, and therefore, what do we need to do? We need to get back to our own guard. The strict standard operation procedures. Those who believe in vaccinations, they should go for vaccine and be vaccinated. Otherwise, if we allow the situation to move on like the way it is, we are likely to get a very serious attack like the one we had in May and April that claimed thousands of people here in Uganda. I think that is my take on that. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stephen, for the wonderful observation. Lawrence, you've heard what Stephen has said and what Miriam said about COVID. And one of the pertinent points that Steve has talked about is the issue of leadership in this regard, where people like members of parliament wait for East African community, and then that's where the problem started from. Can you also analyze your dimensional observation about COVID right now in Uganda?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Nadine. Looking at COVID at the moment, where Uganda is.
Your sound seems to be very
Can you hear me, Doctor?
It's quite low.
The fight against COVID, I think it's we have as an and the litigation. We're probably trying to. We've done our best, if that's the best we can do, and but again, I think just like before, we've discussed COVID here a good number of times, and I've always taken it back to the citizens. I'm like, I think the citizens are the ones who want to also guarantee their own health first before the responsibility is shifted to the government or the Ministry of Health or whichever other agencies might be concerned or, given the responsibility to take care of Ugandans. Our vaccination rates at the moment are not so impressive because we only have about 3% of the fully vaccinated people, around. Those people put in the shots of the vaccine. And but again, we have a good percentage of people that has actually at least gotten one dose in Ugandans. So at least people are starting to get the vaccine, distributed to them in some sort of way, given all the limitations we have and logistical challenges in having the vaccine available. But looking at the current mutation of the COVID virus that we have, which is Omicron, I just wanted to draw your attention towards that data that our producers put up, that is from the National
I hope we have lost Lawrence in that regard. And let me try to, when you look at COVID, I think as we wrap up on the issue of COVID, it is basically the role of everyone in the community that try to make sure that things go the right way, because COVID attacks a person individually, and depending on the social economic problem that we always have in Uganda, we always have the impact on us when we don't do what we are supposed to do in order to prevent COVID. COVID is real and attacks a person individually depending on your medical status, and so we do not have anything that can help you as long as you don't help yourself. Lawrence, you seem to have been lost, but can you wind up your point, please, as we try to finish this topic?
Yes, I was just in the middle explaining what findings the Health Security Agency made on just the recent Omicron variation in the UK. So apparently, at least the UK at least has the luxury of having at least all the vaccine type options to its citizens, and they were able to at least carry out an analysis on how effective each of these is, and against symptomatic people, asymptomatic people, and just the general impact of the vaccine into the population. And as you can see, the effectiveness, we can agree, is desirable for almost all the three, or at least two of the vaccines that we have on the market, that is Pfizer and AstraZeneca. Not so much, I think, for that. But the vaccines themselves being effective and being taken up by the population, there's been an interesting discovery that there are more people, or actually the people actually contracting this new variant also happen to be vaccinated, which is paradoxical in a way. It's a little misleading in that we all get the vaccine thinking that this is supposed to protect us against what is prevailing and maybe what it could potentially, we could potentially contract. But at the moment, it just seems like the Omicron is also still able to infect those people who have already received the vaccine itself. That is even more scary. And of course, that doesn't mean that those who are unvaccinated are in any way protected. They still as easily get the vaccine. It's just that the Omicron is spreading more easily amongst almost, the entire population, and this is very worrisome. Now, looking at Uganda's population, vaccination rates being as low as, of course, this poses a great threat to our people in how they are supposed to be protecting themselves against this new variant. And of course, we're still going to get back to the basics, which is, you have to wear a mask, make sure that you wash your hands and keep just hygiene just around. Just from where we started, that is exactly what we have to protect ourselves at the moment. There's not so much we can do or people can do from their standpoint, apart from just just do these dues that the organization already pushed out in the beginning. Other than that, if you're going to wait for a vaccine that might not as well protect you, you might be in for a long wait. So people have to just do what they've always been told to do, and what they have been doing from the beginning, those at least who have been able to make sure that they don't get the virus from the start of the epidemic. Other than that, it's a long challenge for the whole international community or the world. The fight against COVID with these new variants that are coming up and are affecting people in unknown ways. Because if you have right now a variant that even the vaccine is not exactly 100% going to protect you against contracting it, then you can see that you're in for your options are still also very limited on that. But we just need to protect ourselves, make sure we do the right thing as we've been always told. your health is your responsibility before it's going to be shifted to the state or the hospital or whichever other body you want to blame for your health. So I would just leave that at that of course the responsibility is in the hands of the Ugandans, other than, you know, the government or whatever they think is going to take care of their own health. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, for that great observation. And we try to go to the final part of our show tonight. Let's have a short, small break, and when we come back, we're going to look at the issue of the NSO group, where some of issues concerning the hacking of the systems of the Ugandan First Son. Let's go for a short break and we'll come back. We'll come back from the short break as we try to analyze issues that have been trending within Uganda. And the last part of our show is going to be concerning about the separate Ugandan deal that brought NSO to the brink of collapse. When you look at the story was broken by Technica Times, which was trying to give an expression of what really happened when the First Son was traveling and a woman sat next to him, and was able to, you know, hack his phone. People wonder whether she hacked his phone and was able to obtain all the information that was concerning about what really conspired. And it's also worse when we had also the US diplomats in Uganda getting hacked as well. So this story, Lawrence, I want you to dig deep in this story, and then we can have a discussion briefly over it as we try to find out. Yes, Lawrence.
Yes, Nadine. Thank you so much again for that topic up. With the NSO topic or issue is, I think we have only gotten some wind of it just recently. Some of us at least weren't paying so much attention to what was happening elsewhere. In regards to what deal the NSO company, which has the Pegasus spyware, which it is selling to government agencies globally. And this software is supposed to help these agencies kind of spy or collect information to potential terrorist groups globally around the world. Now, of course, this company is based in Israel, and they sell this software to help governments globally in the fight against terrorism. So it is for a good purpose, not necessarily that it is supposed to be used against innocent civilians world over. And I think it does actually cost a lot of money just procuring this software to use it for any nation. But Uganda did get access to this software supposedly, And what has actually put us in the limelight is the way we used it, in that we used it to spy or rather obtain information from a few US diplomats that are based in the US Embassy in Uganda. So this is what shed the limelight to Pegasus and NSO as a company. And the question is, why were they spying on these US citizens? Of course, NSO had certain clauses or terms of, in their terms of selling this software globally. They were not supposed to sell or rather actually spy on US citizens. So any number that is in the US that's a +1 was off limits in their terms as to who, when they sell the software out there, at least the US is trying to look out for the privacy of its citizens in that they shouldn't be, they're off limits into as far as who they could collect information from. And of course, this is based on the fact that US does try to do a good job in protecting its national, borders and boundaries, and keeping tabs on its own citizens to root out any terrorist cells or, organizational units that might be cropping up in the states itself. So for Uganda, I think we're a little careless in how we deployed this software. I don't know what they were looking for in, these US diplomats' phones. They happen to be iPhones, but yes, they were carrying Ugandan SIM cards at the moment. And of course, this is now the conflict in this case, in that as much as the NSO was not supposed to touch US citizens' phones or phone numbers, now the diplomats were carrying Ugandan SIM cards, so they had the +256, and to the local cell companies that we have. Now, it brings up a very interesting debate in that, yes, as much as US citizens are not supposed to touch them, then the +1 numbers, but in this case, yes, they are US citizens, but they are carrying Ugandan lines. Does this term still apply in this case? And of course, US being the country, it is still, it doesn't obliterate the first deal, which is they were still not to touch US citizens. If they knew that these were US citizens still, that first part of the agreement should have been respected, despite that they were carrying, local lines from a local country like Uganda. And of course, NSO has been hit.
To chip in a lot of it, remember, we've had a lot of some issues with even way technologies, where we had the Americans being suspicious of the Chinese helping Uganda with that kind of software and then spying on their systems. Here comes a situation that when you look at what happened, it was hitting direct on the security of the president of Uganda, regardless of going to the diplomats, the American diplomats. How do you think this leaves the relationship between, because it seems like dictators in Middle East and Africa are using this Pegasus software so much to spy on their opponents and trying to see what move they are doing. But now it has gone to the big brother. That's why I think the noise is coming so fast and high. What's your take about that? Because you remember what happened with Huawei as well.
Yes, indeed, this is going to be a very big battle moving forward, and we are in an age where warfare is now on the internet. It's now cyber warfare more than boots on the ground and big guns and all that arsenal that we have out there. The war is now bigger on the World Wide Web other than on the ground. So, of course, regimes just like the one we have in our country are also getting or tapping into that space, and they need to, of course, put more funding or rather buy more tools in that regard on that front, such that they can be ahead of the opponents. It's not a secret, by the way. Yes, you just quoted Huawei, but it's not just Huawei. Just looking at the number of Chinese phones that you have on the market within Uganda, most of these are, especially the ones that we think are so cheap and they mimic, big brands like the Samsungs, like the iPhones that are coming from China. But these are, which are also procured from the black market at cheaper rates, and people being, falling in love with smartphones and they're not getting original phones. They are falling prey to some of these projects that are running. These phones are cheap, but they are laced with software that is actually copying data and stealing information from citizens out there. There's so much evidence to show that most of the smartphones that we have, especially in the Ugandan population, are indeed actually spying on the citizens. And this time, not even for the government, but for other corporations that are overseas. And they did plug this there, and they're just siphoning the data of most of these people's phones. It is no wonder that so many people find data very expensive. Not because, yes, it is actually still expensive. We can still debate that, but still, some of the data, when you look at the usage of the data, it is actually more spent on background activities that most of the users have no control over. This is also evident in the apps that most of our users put on their phones. So much is happening in the background. They don't know what is happening. You find an application which is supposed to be taking photos, and it has access to your SMS logs, it has access to your call logs and all that, and it has access to your phone book, which probably it shouldn't. Most people don't pay attention to some of these privacy, issues or accessibility issues on their phones, but these are in the background taking data off their phones. And there's not so much they're going to do unless the users are actually educated on how to turn some of these services off. But it's a big challenge, and we're in the middle of that war, which is we have to face on. But looking at most of the spyware which is happening out there, that's always going to be ongoing, and it's just imperative that people are actually taught on the different ways they can protect themselves. I think Apple is actually doing a very is fighting the good fight in that it's always releasing patches and updates, just like in the case of the Pegasus systems that the NSO group launched against the diplomats. Apple was still able to tell, or rather ascertain, how these vulnerabilities happen, and they did release some patches for it. So it pays, it comes in at least on the other side to show that there are solutions to some of these kind of loopholes that are left in the system, that there's a solution to them. But again, how many Ugandans are having iPhones out?
Thank you very much.
Protect themselves from such attacks.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you very much for the insight. I would like to bring in Miriam at this point. Miriam, it's now a fight in technology. Uganda seemed to be the first to embrace the Pegasus software, or spyware, which they bought a lot of money, and now it is backfiring in a way that they thought they would work with it on other people, but now it seems like being that it was in the market, other people bought it and they were using it on the first son, which made him to make a lot of noise, and that's why it is now out in the public. And you remember, as our producer said, that Biden administration blacklisted Israel NSO group. You remember Trump's administration had also blacklisted the Huawei technology, and they were specifically saying that Huawei is dealing with Uganda to spy on other countries, where they had bought those CCTV cameras that they say they were putting on the roads, and they brought a lot of chaos, and they had to send a spy to come over in Uganda to identify the problem. So here is a fight in technology, and it's pushing, bringing the two allies, that is Israel and America, in a controversy that basically within the Ugandan environment. What's your take about this?
When it comes to Uganda using spy technology to get information in in unscrupulous ways. I think this is not the first time we are seeing that. Back in 2011, 2012, there was a German software company which sold the same spying system to Uganda. It was called Gamma International Limited, and then it sold something that was nicknamed Fungua Macho. And I think it's Finn Fisher Technologies, which was owning that particular software that was sold to Uganda and other repressive countries like Rwanda and other dictatorial countries in the region to spy on its citizens. And they said that the technology, okay, they bought the technology in the guise of using it to fight terrorism, but the same technology was used for internal repression, spying on the opposition politicians, tracking them and arresting them. And it was reported that most of this software was used to against FDC leaders who were the leading opposition group in Uganda at that moment. And that's how most opposition leaders would be tracked on their way and arrested. And again, there was another funny way they were using the information. They were using it to track individuals and get, private information, which they would use to blackmail those individuals, either for business or for politics. Like someone say, hey, we have a file on you, and you either agree to do ABCD or we do this. And even though, as BBC reported in 2015, that German company was tasked to explain why it allowed its technology to be abused by Uganda. It defended itself by saying that for it thought that it was to fight terrorism, like what Pegasus owners are doing. So the issue is, how can an ordinary citizen protect itself from such a government which is going to go an extra mile to get information, to track individuals illegally, to curtail opposition activities, to curtail private citizens like businessmen for its own good or for its selfish ways? The Apple coming up to accuse Israel. I mean, the Americans, for me, I'm gonna be like a devil's advocate in this one and say, yeah, they deserve it. Maybe somehow, maybe that's how they are going to wake up and see that Ugandans are unfairly treated. They all along knew that this technology was there and was being used against innocent civilians, but they never cared because their systems were not attacked. But this time that their systems were attacked, they come out to condemn Israel. But where does that leave the ordinary Ugandan? Where does that leave you, an ordinary Ugandan, maybe an opposition leader or a businessman trying to do your business, and your phone is being hacked left and right by unscrupulous security operatives, maybe by the government trying to curtail your movements, or by other private people trying to blackmail you? If America is interested in curbing the misuse of Pegasus, they should care about everybody, not only their citizens or diplomats. So for me, I think we need to task our government to stop blackmailing its citizens as Ugandans, and like Lawrence say, excuse me, I don't know the previous, yeah, Lawrence, excuse me. He said that the biggest challenge of Africa is that we are trying to adopt a technology we don't have means of controlling. We don't even know to what extent this technology is infiltrating our lives. We are not trained enough to understand how deep it's going to affect us today or in the future, yet we are embracing it like from outside. Internally, we don't have any mechanisms to protect the citizens, to protect unknowing people who are trapped in this internet wave. We store our information on iCloud. We don't know who's in charge of those iClouds and who accesses our data and how they use it. The other time, the Chinese company Huawei, which was There was another Chinese company which was accused of planting spyware in AU building in Addis. These are the people we just accept every other thing because we don't have capacity to cross-check it. We don't have capacity to build our own internal protection mechanisms and see who is tracking our data and what are they using it for. And all our hope is about maybe US coming up to say something about it. What are we Ugandans, we Africans doing about all this information technology that is invading our private space that we are using for business, for studies, to store our information that we don't even know who is in charge of right now? That's how we are losing our copyrights. That's how we are losing all the information, be it security, be it for business, be it for our own knowledge, like medicine, like cultural information that should be helping our society. It's being sniffled out. Whether we know it or not, we don't have control about it whatsoever. And it's very dangerous. How are we going to compete in the global economy if we are so vulnerable like that?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that wonderful observation, Miriam. I believe it has dug deep into the issue. Stephen, I want Stephen to also have an analysis of this. Steve, when you look at Uganda seems to be very interesting because they seem to value issues which are really very unbasic. People, there are a lot of things that would be really helped to develop, but the government is putting a lot of money in the software and hardware, which is really very disturbing. What's your take about the Uganda putting a lot of money in spyware software, and yet here comes a situation that it was going to use it on the people, and later it backfires and brings on the fire onto them themselves?
Thank you so much, Doctor. I want to appreciate Lawrence and my sister Miriam. They have really given a very good background to this kind of topic. Now, to that particular question, of course, Uganda, just like any other country, especially in Africa, whose leaders have been around for some good time, and they seem not to define when they will be away. One of the key areas where they invest close sums of money is in the espionage or in the spy network. Apart from this software, you will discover that a few years ago, there was a bill that was brought in Parliament, which okayed government agencies to spy on Ugandans. So, spying in Uganda, it is a common thing, and the reason for this, especially for Uganda, there are mainly two reasons. Number one, it is to spy on their political opponents within the country. And then number two, to spy on those that they consider a threat, especially outside Uganda. And that was the reason why you must have heard that there was a very serious issue between this country and Rwanda. It is believed that the main reason why there has been that kind of serious conflict between Uganda and Rwanda, it is stemming from espionage, spying on each other. Now, when you look at Uganda falling prey to spy on the American diplomats, it is a very serious issue that somebody may not easily look at on the surface. It is very unfortunate that all these games that we've been playing around on Ugandan videos and on those we consider to be a threat to Uganda has been going on for some good time, just like Miriam was saying. But it has been smooth simply because our big brothers, the Americans, have not been part of this. But now, because we have done it and we have scratched their back, it is not going to be a simple issue. Why? You bear with me that espionage is considered as one of the worst crimes by the Americans. Of course, you are aware that for them, they are the leading spies. They have so many spy agencies, CIA, FBI, and so many others that I may not even know. But now, when they get to learn that you are spying on them, you stand out to be a very big threat to their existence. And that is one of the reasons why during Obama's time, it created diplomatic conflicts between Russia and America to the level where Russian diplomats were expelled from Washington. It is one of the serious reasons that has always caused conflicts between the US and then China, the US and South and China. Do you expect them to spare Ugandans? Now, the challenge I see in this is that it has already soured up the diplomatic relationship between Uganda and the US. And in my own opinion, I think why the Ugandan spy agents went ahead to overstep their boundaries, it is because they wanted to find out, number one, the relationship between the US and then the regime's political opponents within Uganda, especially Bobi Wine and others. And then number two, how they garner their support, especially logistical support. Where are the channels of the financial support that these political dissidents get from abroad? Where do the monies pass? You remember we are told one of the issues to deal with malaria problems it is told, is a hearsay. I may not have concrete evidence over that. It is told that Kiza Besige's money used to go through Cyrus Bank, and was one of the reasons why the big man got annoyed to the level of closing a bank that had 1 year been voted as one of the best. A year before it was closed, it had been voted as one of the best banks. You wonder what happened in between within a period of 1 year, that now the bank was declared insolvent, poorly managed, and at the end of the day qualifying to be closed, and even its assets being sold. We are told that perhaps it was one of the reasons why Greenland Bank was sold. Rumors have it that the current ADF and others, that their money is used to be channeled through Greenland Bank. Now, in Uganda, you'll discover that perhaps they're spying on these American diplomats to find out the relationship that they have with the political opponents like Bobi Wine. So I really have a very big fear that there are dire consequences that are awaiting Uganda as a country, and there are dire consequences that are awaiting Ugandan diplomats and officers in person, in case they're investigated and there are serious personalities that overstepped their boundaries and spied on the big brothers. We are waiting to see what is going to happen. But it's very bad and very dangerous for Uganda. Just like I've told you, if they could not spare their fellow big brothers I'm wondering whether they can really spare Ugandans. So that is my observation as far as that one is concerned. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for wonderful observation. We are not going to go so much beyond this time, as you know, we have other programs that are waiting to go on air. But before we close, we'd like to have each of our guests at least 2 minutes to wrap up and then say goodbye. Let me start with Miriam. Miriam, it has been a pleasure having you on this show, and we believe we shall have you again, though we had some technical challenges, and that has deterred us from having a very great conversation. Nonetheless, the conversation has been very superb, and we appreciate your time and your work and all the research that you've done when you came up. Would you wrap up your work, your submissions, and then we have you say goodbye to our viewers?
Thank you, Dr. Juko, and thanks for inviting me and meeting the fellow panelists and listening to you and the great views being shared here. On wrapping up, I think we still have a lot of work to do as East African community. But the admission of DRC, I hope if it's really done on good faith and with good intentions, it's a positive move, and I look forward to a greater, maybe pacified Great Lakes region, economically progressive East African community, and maybe a united Africa in the near future. As for Corona, I really I would like to appeal to everyone, like Lawrence said, it's a duty of every other person to protect themselves. But we all know that as an individual, you can't do much to protect yourself from a contagious disease. Some are exposed, say, from a school, they go to a store, grocery store, you go to, or from your workplace, or the taxi you're gonna sit in going to work. Especially the situation in Uganda, where we know like most people are really very vulnerable when it comes to public places. I hope that someone is putting in a mechanism, especially looking at the treatment. The vaccines are there, and as people continue to get vaccinated, we hope for some sort of herd immunity. But we also need to explore more treatment methods, the same way we are dealing with malaria, because Corona is going to be with us for a long time. We will maybe get more variants which will resist the vaccines that we are using. So the best way to counter it is to look for a long-lasting solution, which is how to manage the patients affected by Corona, treatment, patient management, availability of medicines, and affordability, especially for the local people and the poor. And when it comes to opening schools, I'm really scared. We have our children going back to school. Will they be protected? Do we have emergency services to rush them to a hospital in case the case is beyond local management? You know, those things are really already knocking on our minds, and it's not comfortable, the situation we are in right now. How do we make it better? And when it comes to the spying, I think all has been said. We said it all. I mean, the last speaker said that we will always have autocratic government spying on their citizens. That's the best they can do. We've had it all over since time immemorial. But how best can you protect individuals? At least there should be some sort of protection somewhere. Maybe individual information, individual data. Is your banking online, banking information safe? How can we embrace technology but at the same time feel safe from intruders, either from the state or private hackers or any other person who would like to abuse the information that we put on our phones or computers? Thank you so much. I really look forward for future interactions with you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miriam. It's a pleasure, and we always have a space for you to come over and share your expertise and experience, and have a good day and a good weekend. Let me have Stephen from Uganda. Stephen, would you wrap up your views as we try to finish up and say goodbye to our viewers?
Thank you so much, Dr. Juko, for having me. I just want to appreciate you and all my fellow panelists. It is a pleasure to share the same platform with Lawrence and Madame Miriam. I want to appreciate you so much for the resourcefulness that you have exhibited in this show. As I wind up, I would pray that the inclusion of Congo would really benefit the East African community. That would be the prayer of every African. Why? Because we assumed it would come with so many tangible benefits compared to the liabilities that we fear it would come with. Number two, I would pray that the East African institutions like the East African Court of Justice, the East African Bank, and all these other institutions that make up the East Africa would be strengthened. And that would sort us out the challenges of selfish interests of member countries, selfish interests of various political heads of these various states. And then two, would have common infrastructure, just like we had before 1977, when we had the unfortunate collapse of the first East African community. If we can have certain common infrastructure that we can share and govern together, I believe it can bring us, it can try to galvanize us as a community, have uniform political agenda, and have common interests. I believe this would be very, very important. But on top of that, it is important, just like I think it was Lawrence who mentioned that out of the 7 member countries now, it is only perhaps Kenya and Tanzania that is peaceful politically. Most of these other countries like Rwanda is not safe politically. Burundi is not yet peaceful. I don't want to mention South Sudan because we all know what is happening there. And I cannot hesitate to mention about Congo, especially the eastern part of it that is full of conflict. So for us to have this baby and to benefit from this community, it is very important that this region, this Great Lakes region, is pacified. And I want to appreciate the government of Uganda for taking that initial move of trying to pacify and also try to set up some necessary infrastructure, because Congo is full of forests, impassable roads, and therefore there is no way you can have a community with such a sorry infrastructure. On Corona, it has been said, and on the spyware, I think Lawrence and Miriam said it all. I just want to pray that we continue living in harmony. I just want to conclude by saying thank you so much for listening to me. Dr. Juko, thank you so much for having me again. May the Lord God bless you. Wish to join you in further interactions. Good evening from Uganda.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you very much for the wonderful interaction we have had with you, and it has been a wonderful day, evening, when our listeners and viewers were able to, get sense out of what your discussion is. Finally, Lawrence, would you wrap up your work, and then
and say goodbye to our viewers.
Well, thank you so much, Nadine, for again another invitation. My final views on today's show, of course, and there was a submission. So, we can agree that yes, the African community is it's been a very good project waiting that we are all yet to share its fruits. And hopefully, with all these steps, and hopefully all that have been taken to widen the base, we can all be able to benefit from the.
have some backlash from your sound, Lawrence. Go ahead.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me right now.
Go ahead.
Yes, please, Doctor. So, just to wrap this up, this African community, we can all agree that it's been a long project in waiting for most of the Ugandans. And even at the current state, we are yet to fully realize the benefits of the community per se. Most Ugandans per se who are found in maybe a village or so are yet to understand this concept, accept it, and be part of it in one way or the other. But all that said, we hope the community or the local leaders can be passionate in trying to sell this project to the local people out there, the local corporations, because so much is happening at the top, but we are not sure whether it's the same at the grassroots level that people understand why this is important, or they can see their lives into the vision of the community. We're yet to see about that, but the call at the moment is most welcome to join the community if it's going to push us into the right direction. And maybe whichever other issues or reservations people have, and these are many, the technocrats who are, given the responsibility to deliberate on all these matters to try to make sure that we have a smooth transition into the community, able to do their job, and we clear all the bottlenecks within and have a whole united region that is free from conflict and ensures certain economic progress for all the citizens within the nations. But coming on to the issue of corona, for me it's always the same. Everyone has to take a personal responsibility to guarantee their health before that responsibility is pushed onto other people. More so in Uganda, whereby if anything happens to your medical bills and so few people have access to insurance and all that, it's all up to our people to take on the responsibility as themselves. And finally, when it comes to the issue of the NSO group and the spyware Pegasus in hacking all these US diplomats, besides all the other people within the nation, more so that has been formally done by to spy on the opposition on these WhatsApp platforms that we have. It still goes back to the issue of privacy, which of course has to be respected. Everyone does deserve to be hoping that they are able to respect in one or the other, however much they are into the fight or in the journey of technology. I think we need to fully understand what we're getting into. And technology is going to be with us. It's going to be used to make so many decisions for us. And it's on that accord that globally there is a very big call for more security personnel in that space to kind of observe, monitor what these systems are doing. I would call to Ugandans to take on the opportunity to get into that space, into the security field, to sort of help our people and themselves into combating some of the challenges that the technologies bring. But other than that, it's everyone's responsibility to guarantee your own security, even on the internet or with whichever devices you're using. Always take on the updates, the best devices you have, but it's your personal responsibility still to to make this. All these other bodies probably less concerned about and more concerned about other objectives. But other than that, I would wish to on that note and thank everyone who's been listening to the issues that affect people out there. Thank you so much, Dr. Juko, fellow panelists, Steve and Miriam. Thank you so much for being part of the show tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for the wonderful observation that you've given us. And we believe our viewers have benefited from the deeply that have made this evening. It is on a sad note that we have lost a son of Africa that has been very pertinent in fighting for freedom and justice and democracy in Africa. This is Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who dies at his 90 years age. It's very unfortunate. He rose to global prominence as the leader of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, and when they were struggling against the oppression regime of the Boers or the South African whites. It became very pertinent with him when he worked within a time of chaos and times of violence and turbulent times. And his sermons in the churches and all that were very, very clear against such operations. He was also awarded a Nobel Prize in the Peace Nobel Prize in 1984, which was one of the highest letters that he climbed when it came to fighting for the rights and good governance in Africa. May his soul rest in peace. We cannot go beyond this. We just thank you very much, our viewers all over the platforms on our TV and also our website. We appreciate your feedback and always appreciate your time that you spend trying to watch and do us as well. We appreciate our guests for the good time that you spent with us and good deliberations that you brought forward.